Guess we're gonna have to retire Zelda not being the main character in a Legend of Zelda game joke. Hello, everybody. Ketchi1383 with Ketchi Gaming, and I'm gonna give my sort of initial thoughts, not quite impressions, because I've been playing it for quite a while. To be past impressions for the Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. So I'm gonna have to apologize for the slightly muted, sort of muffled tone. I cannot, for the life of me, figure out what's wrong with my mic today. I'll probably end up increasing the decibels in editing, but I'm sorry. Anyways, when this game was announced, I was definitely looking forward to it. Not because I'm like, yeah, Zelda should finally get her own game. No, I'm just glad for Zelda games in general. It's actually my favorite Nintendo series, even more so than Mario. If they put out more Legend of Zelda games, I would probably have more of those. But since the sheer volume of Mario games they put out there, that's why I just have more of those. But yes, it is a different take on the Legend of Zelda series altogether. Now, anyone who just watched the announcement trailer knows that Link does get captured. They don't hide that in that you play as Zelda. You initially do get to start out as Link going to rescue Zelda. And the art style is very similar. Not quite exactly the same, but it's very similar to that of Link's Awakening's diorama style that they use with a sort of plastic toy look. It's charming in its own way. I mean, I honestly think it looks good, and I have no real issues with it. And I suspect that, yes, they probably reuse some assets to help reduce the cost of the game, which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you built a whole entire engine, you might as well keep using it. So, what exactly is The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Time, if not a traditional Legend of Zelda game? Yes, it has a lot of those elements in this game, but there's a huge difference, obviously, that being Zelda. So, there are some hack and slash kind of elements to the game, which I'll cover. But for the most part, it is more puzzle based in kind of multiple ways, especially in comparison to previous Legend of Zelda games. So it doesn't really start out like a typical Zelda, especially with Link being captured for all intents and purposes. And they actually get a little on the dark side because they're going to put Zelda to death after being framed for the rifts being opened. I'm not going to ruin too much detail there. But they introduce the puzzle solving element more or less right off the bat, escaping from your dungeon cell, more or less as a tutorial, obviously. They do this by introducing Try, who gives you a rod that allows you to make echoes or copies of objects that you more or less learn to make throughout the game, and you then have to put some of these objects together to solve some of these puzzles, like how to get up onto a higher ledge. It actually lends itself to exploration as well, how to get higher up in parts of the map, or I should say overworld. What have you learned and what could you put together in order to get to a higher location or solve a puzzle? And it's not simply just spawn something I have. There's actually some logic that you need to apply to it, and maybe even some testing in some cases of what you can and cannot get away with. Like dropping an item from a certain height, depending on what it's made out of, will destroy the object. Or if you drop something too heavy on top of another object, it'll be destroyed as well. Some things you might be able to infer safely, others you might just have to do through testing, like I said. When it comes to combat, it's a bit of a mixed bag. You primarily can use, I guess, for all intents and purposes, I was about to say minions, but let's go with echoes of monsters that you've defeated in the past, and then learn their patterns. Now, certain monsters will be better, or I should say echoes, will be better for fighting other monsters, and then you learn those as well, which you can use on different enemies. Like right there, I was trying to use Octoroks, but the Octoroks were super slow, and they didn't have the sort of, I guess, horizontal, or not horizontal, vertical attack ability, so I had to switch to the Spear Bokoblins instead. You have to make conscious decisions on what units you can do. I mean, there are times where you can just sort of get certain echoes and treat everything as a nail and it'll work just fine, but some choices will be better than others depending on what's going on. Now, the other thing you can do is you can actively throw objects at the enemies as well, like rocks, because you get to copy a rock and you can chuck rocks at them. I find it perfectly fine just to have the echoes do all my dirty work for me, to be honest. And then you get to sort of do the twisted thing every now and again when they are no longer of use, you just zap them out of existence. The other part is turning into Link, or I should say it's Swordman form, where you more or less take on Link's attributes and get to use some of his equipment that you use at the beginning of the game to fight monsters. In this case, it was actually extremely useful for beating the final boss. Let me clarify that final boss of the first dungeon. Let me circle back to puzzle solving real quick. There's another ability you get to use, which you can also use in combat, where you more or less guide something by having try attach himself for all intents and purposes. It's very reminiscent of the God Hand / Magnesis ability from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. A lot of, let's say, inspiration was definitely taken from those games. But also from other Zelda games as well. It's worn on its sleeve. Like, you probably recognize one of the structures I showed that's kind of recognizable, particularly if you've played A Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. So it's kind of actually an homage to the Legend of Zelda series as a whole, not just its own original thing. I mean, they do it respectfully. Now, as far as the story goes, for anyone who's afraid that Zelda's there to clean up the buffoonery of Link after failing to be a competent hero, no, he was actually wandering around the world helping people, and they mention him constantly, praising him for helping them, inspiring one Gerudo warrior to become a soldier. I probably said that was redundant by calling a warrior a Gerudo tribes member to become a soldier, I guess. And there's other people as you play the game. So, no, he's not some bubbling idiot who has to have a woman come in and fix his mistakes because he was dumb. It was done tastefully and competently, so don't worry about that if that's what you're worrying about in any shape or form. And for people who like to stick to some of the original Zelda formula, you still do things like gather heart pieces and stuff like that. Now, another part is you can gather materials to make smoothies. That's how they're handling food and health regenerative items. You can also get a bottle with a fairy that makes a return as well. Now, one thing they did do is they made rupees, at least in my opinion, feel like they have more weight or importance to them, giving out fewer rupees in comparison to what you might find in previous Legend of Zelda games. Now, there might be a way to earn more of them faster by gathering materials and selling them, because you can also do that in this game as well. Like I previously said, a lot of inspiration for what's happening in this game comes from previous Legend of Zelda games, particularly Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. But I'm enjoying the game so far. I'm actually enjoying it a lot. I like the puzzle solving aspect to it. I like choosing what echoes to use in combat. I mean, I'm just enjoying the game overall. Unlike Princess Peach Showtime, which I was actually had a bit of trepidation in regards to this title after just playing the demo. I didn't even play the full game of Princess Peach's Showtime, but it was so overly simplified and lackluster that I was disappointed that's what they did with Peach. And I was afraid they might do something similar with Zelda, but they didn't. They actually have some depth and to the mechanics, and you have to think about what you do. Princess Peach Showtime, I mean, first thing they had in the demo, the game practically played itself at times. This is much, much better, and I'm glad they treated Zelda better than they did Peach. Maybe we'll get a better Peach game in the future, but that just wasn't it. And I watched some reviews on it, and they all admitted that, yes, the game was super simple and super easy. But anyways, yes, I digress. The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Time, it's fun so far. I would definitely buy it, especially because typically Nintendo games don't go on sale until maybe several years after they're out, and that's only for like $10. So you're probably not going to get too much of a discount. And if you're going to wait for a discount, don't hold your breath because you're not going to get one anytime soon. I mean, I suppose it could happen if something changed in Nintendo, but I wouldn't count on it. So this last part was actually pleasantly surprised they did what I thought they would do with Impa. I just wanted to show it. Anyways, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Have a good one.